What is up, everybody? Welcome to another edition of the Weekend Roundup here on Touchline Talk. Thank you so much for tuning in. As always, be sure to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any of the content going up on the channel. Going to keep it pretty brief today, but I do want to talk about some of the weekend's results in the Premier League and the bigger picture implications of them moving forward. You look at this week for Liverpool. They have Everton beaten at Goodison Park in this game that they were kind of dreading and had to get rescheduled. It was just sort of looming there. It's an extra game. It's obviously a very emotionally charged game. And James Tarkowski, he does what James Tarkowski does. All of a sudden, you dropped points. And then you go watch Arsenal find a way to get past Leicester. I'll briefly talk about the Arsenal part here before going back to Liverpool. Not a great performance. Of course, that's a completely remade front line. I do see this as Mikel Merino's job at the number 9 position moving forward. Not necessarily because he came in and scored the goals, although obviously that was a really good sign and an incredibly important thing to keep this title race interesting. But more so because it became abundantly clear from minute 1 to minute 90, the best version of this team with the available players currently does not involve Raheem Sterling. And it was more effective with Merino as the 9 than Trossard. So the solution, for a variety of reasons, is to move Trossard back to the left and to play Merino through the middle. It's not just because he scored a couple goals. It just makes the most sense based on everything we saw in this game. But ultimately, Arsenal get their points. So Liverpool drop points, watch Arsenal find a way to get the win, and then have this game against Wolves. They're up 2-0, then it's 2-1, and Wolves play much better in the second half. There's definitely some pressure at the end of the game. There was a late free kick from right outside the penalty area. And so until that final whistle blew, Arsenal fans were hoping more points were going to be dropped. There was a real chance once Wolves got back into the game. And Liverpool found a way to hold on to 2-1. Was it pretty? No. Were they great? No. But they've done this pretty consistently. Right? They find ways to win games that they don't perform well in. And the other part, and this is the slogan I have embraced for this, the secret to their success this season is that they haven't let bumps become slumps. 1, 2 bad results don't turn into 3 or 4. And that's why this game was so important. Because you look at what they have next. At Aston Villa, at Manchester City, home against Newcastle. If you drop points at Goodison, you drop points at home against Wolves, and then go into those 3 games, all of a sudden this gets really interesting. And you're just giving Arsenal more oxygen to breathe to continue to keep that hope alive. You're giving them more confidence to think that they might actually be able to pull this off. Now you make sure you have that breathing room heading into these set of games so that if you lose to City, if something happens, if you drop some points, because these are 3 really good opponents coming up, you're still right there. You're still in control of the title race. Could it tighten? Sure. If Arsenal also hold up their end of the bargain over these next couple weeks before the international break. But ultimately, you got out of this week and you feel good if you're Liverpool. If you would just say, okay, 2 teams near the top that have been sort of in the relegation conversation all season. Obviously, Everton win again this weekend. They've moved out of that. But for most of the season, we're in the relegation battles. Wolves are certainly still in the relegation battle. To take 4 points from those 2 games, you don't feel good about it all, outscoring them by 1 goal combined. But that takes away the context. It was always going to be difficult to win that game at Goodison. They got a point out of it. They found a way to beat Wolves. They've given themselves the luxury of that's enough. because of how consistent they've been this season and because they haven't let one or two bad results turn into 3 or 4. And you saw that again in this game. The other thing, this race for top 4, top 5 is becoming really interesting, not only because you have a Manchester City in the thick of it who just sort of fluctuate from really good to sometimes fine to bad game to game. You know, they blow the lead against Real Madrid, smash Newcastle smithereens, get blown out by Arsenal. It just, you know what they're capable of for on the good side and the bad side, and you just don't really know what team you're going to get every single week. So you've got that part of it. Obviously, you've got Nottingham Forest. Then you have, can Newcastle get back up there? Obviously, Bournemouth are having a terrific season, and you have Chelsea in the mix there as well. But you look at this weekend, City, Bournemouth, huge winners. I've remained skeptical of Chelsea. I talked about that a few weeks ago. There's another piece of evidence with that loss. Nottingham Forest have really started to come back to the pack. And so you have this wide open race that table will look very, very different had Newcastle beaten City as opposed to the other way around, and had Forest taken care of business, and had, Bournemouth stumbled or something like that, had Chelsea won. But Forest have put themselves in a really good position, so they're, of course, still in really good shape. But this might have been the weekend where City and Bournemouth separated themselves from Chelsea and Newcastle. Because there's a good chance that Premier League ends up with 5 teams. And that's the other part of this is we might not know for a while whether it's going to be 4 or 5, which adds some drama to this as well. But that was the other thing I came away thinking about. Is this was a huge weekend in terms of setting the foundation and the framing for this top 4 Champions League battle for European places, whatever you want to call it, in the last couple months of the season. Of course, there's still plenty of time left. But once we get past this international break in a couple weeks, it's going to be, okay, who is trying to hold on to their positions? Who has to go gain ground? And with the performances this weekend, with the results this weekend, for all of those teams that are in the thick of that 3 to 7 range, Bournemouth and City just sat there, and City helped themselves and Bournemouth by taking care of Newcastle, but they watched an awful lot of points come off the board for everybody else. And they are in those positions right now. And we're getting close to the point where you only have to do so much if you're in that position, just like I was talking about with Liverpool. You've given yourself that cushion, that little bit of margin for error. We're probably not quite there yet, just because there are so many games left, and City have one coming up against Liverpool, for example. But more than anything, because I always believed City were going to finish top 4, maybe not 3rd, definitely not 2nd, but I did think they'd finish at least 4th. But this is becoming more and more real for Bournemouth. It's not out of the realm of possibility that Bournemouth catch Nottingham Forest. And I also have a lot of faith in Newcastle. Obviously, not a good weekend at all. But I'm to the point where I'll say I like Bournemouth's chances better than Chelsea's. I haven't dug too much into that to provide some real detailed analysis or looked at remaining fixture lists or anything like that. I just like what I see from Bournemouth more. I like the vibes and the mental headspace of Bournemouth a lot better than Chelsea. And I also just think that Bournemouth have a more multi-dimensional attack. I've been talking about this, but Chelsea really struggle when Cole Palmer is not phenomenal. You can't point to that guy for Bournemouth. That guy is 4 different guys or maybe even 5 or 6 different guys on different days. So they don't have a Cole Palmer. But they have a lot of guys who can be the focal point and the central hub of the attack. And I just don't see that many players for Chelsea. So I'll take Antonio Raiola and Bournemouth the way things are looking right now. Of course, plenty of games left. We'll have to see how things play out. But those were my two big takeaways from the weekend. Is there was some real defining moments to help shape this top four race and the battle for the European spots moving forward. And it's Liverpool, again, doing just enough, making sure one hiccup, one bump in the road doesn't become a long-term slump, and keeping Arsenal at arm's distance, and that's incredibly important with what they have coming up next. That is all for this edition of the Weekend Roundup. There will not be a video next week as I will be out of town. Just putting that out there right now. There will be a 5 things from the week, though. At least that's the plan as of this moment. Thank you so much for tuning in. Be sure to hit that subscribe button, and I'll see you next time.